Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our session on how to create the candidate experience of your dreams without changing your ATS. We know that in today's world, companies need to be able to move and change fast, but sometimes the core systems we rely on, especially the big ones, don't move or change fast. So what do you do when you need to add things like speed, automation, best-in-class candidate experiences to your recruitment process? Well, you could request some custom development work, or you could look to bolt-ons that integrate with your system, or you could do what our guest, Becky McGugan, did and solve the problem without touching the core system at all. So Becky, hello. I'm so excited to have you on with us today.
Thank you.
We're going to hear more about Becky and how she's transforming recruitment at E.ON UK in just a moment. First, I'd like to say thank you again to everyone listening in. I know there's a lot going on right now, budgets to finalize, strategic planning for 2021, and conference season is in full swing. So it seems like even though things are virtual this year, there's just as much hustle and bustle as ever. So I really appreciate you spending some of your time here with us. My name is Brianna Harper, and I'm your webinar host. I'm also your resource for any questions you have during the session or after the session today. We have about 40 minutes of content planned for today, and after that, we're going to open it up to Q&A. So if you have any questions or comments along the way, please chat them in. You don't have to wait till the end of the webinar. You can go ahead and get your comments and questions in anytime you think of them. Then after the session today, I'm going to send out the recording and the slide deck, so you can have that for reference. And if you have any questions that we don't get to or questions that you think of after the session, please reach out. You can find me on social at OutmatchHCM, or you can email me at bharper@outmatch.com. So now I'll let you hear from the real star of the show. Becky McGugan is the head of resourcing at E.ON UK. Becky, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So Becky McGugan, I have been with E.ON since 2007, so coming up to 14 years. Been only in recruitment up till recently for E.ON. So I fell into a recruitment role like most people back in 2007, and since then I've sort of done a lot of roles within the company. Personal life, so I turned 40 this year, so a big milestone birthday, which wasn't great seeing as we was in lockdown, so not the best one. But I've got 2 young children as well, so apologies if one of those does pop in at some stage throughout this. I have tried to keep them away. But yeah, 2 young children who keep me very busy. Yeah, that's probably it about me.
Thank you. I think you're going to have to probably do like a round 2 birthday where you can do a big splash when things aren't so
That's
locked
what I'm
down.
planning, yes. Yeah.
And I love that. I love that you said you fell into recruiting, because I hear that all the time from people as we're talking through these stories. Yeah. So I think a lot of people on the call are going to be able to relate to that. Okay, really quick before we begin, I want to show you 2 other events you might be interested in. I mentioned that it's conference season, so if you plan to attend the virtual HR Tech conference this year, there's really no reason not to, because it's free. I invite you to come see our HR Tech Talk on Friday the 30th. This is going to be a 20-minute session where Chief Solutions Officer Robin Stencil is going to talk about the latest challenges and trends in candidate experience. And there'll also be a live Q&A throughout that session. And then in November, we're going to continue our monthly webinar series here at Outmatch, looking at how to get ahead of hiring needs and volume in 2021. So we're going to look at the labor market and how that has changed. We're going to look at the skills shortage, and we're going to look at best ways to scale recruitment. So if you enjoyed today's webinar, I hope to see you back for our next one. One last thing, today's session is valid for 1 professional development credit for the SHRM CP or the SHRM SCP. So I'll chat out that activity ID to everyone at the end of the session today. All right, so you heard from me, you heard from Becky. Now I want to hear from everyone on the call. I'm going to launch 2 quick polls, and this is going to help us really gauge where you're at in your candidate experience journey. And we'll be able to talk to that throughout the webinar today. So you should see poll number 1 pop up on your screen. If you could just quickly put in your answer there, then we'll move on to the next one. All right, I'll give it just a couple more seconds. If you haven't voted yet, please put in your answer, and then we'll roll forward. All right. Looks like we've got just about everybody in. And in the lead so far is people rating their candidate experience as 47% on par with others. So I'll just share this quickly so you all can see the answers that other people put in. No surprise that we don't have any votes for best ever. You probably wouldn't be attending this webinar if you felt that way. And I think we all have work to do. We're always trying to get better and get stronger. So we're going to talk about ways to do that today. All right, let's quickly move to poll number 2. Okay, so since we didn't have any votes for my candidate experience is the best ever, tell us a little bit about why you think that is. So why isn't your candidate experience where you want it to be? Is it that, you know, it just hasn't been a priority? I think that's a challenge. That there are a million other things to do. So making this a priority, it's something that can fall to the wayside, and it's also something that you may have to fight to make a priority. Too big of an investment. I mean, there's a lot of things out there you can invest in, solutions and tools and integrations, and all of that stuff is going to cost money. So again, you got to be able to make that business case, and it has to be important enough. And then the recruitment process itself needs work. So there's probably a lot of tweaks you want to make, and then you're thinking of the experience as a layer on top of that. And then technology, maybe it's just what you have today isn't providing you all the capabilities that you wish it would. There's challenges you're running into with integration. So I will share these poll results with everyone. All right, so again, we have the leader is C here. The recruitment process needs some help. So that's really good to know. I think it's a good sign that we don't have any blockers in that it's too big an investment. So that's either it's seen as a worthy investment, or you guys are looking at solutions out there that just aren't going to take the whole budget. Becky, I'm curious, is there anything here, what do you relate to most in these answers? Or is there anything here that surprises you to see from the audience?
No, I would probably agree. If I was to rank them, it'd be the same, yeah.
Yeah.
My experience.
Yeah, okay. Perfect. So I've got the polls closed down, and let's get going here. Okay, so again, Becky is here from E.ON, and E.ON is an international company and a really big name in Europe. But for anyone on the call, I know we have a lot of US listeners, so for anyone on the call that's not familiar, Becky, could you tell us a little bit more about E.ON?
Sure, yeah. So E.ON is the UK's largest supplier of renewable electricity. We've got over 3 million homes that are receiving 100% renewable electricity as standard. But in total, we've got around 6 million customers. We operate for homes and businesses, but we also do the cities, so the energy cities. I'm not sure if you've heard of them, but they're big products that we work with the councils, but we also work with the housing developments to build towns that all run off like one big generator, for example. So
wow.
Some really exciting, yeah. Our core focus really is to provide decentralized, green and interconnected solutions that address the needs of our customers and those of the environment as well. So that's our main focus. And earlier on in the year, we entered a strategic partnership with Kraken Technologies, which is part of Octopus Energy Group. And that was in relation to our UK residential and SME energy customers. And that was a platform that was brought in to future-proof the E.ON customer base. And it just meant that we operate differently from a retail perspective when it comes to gas and electricity. So that's forming the part of E.ON Next. So that's sort of the spin-off from E.ON UK to E.ON Next. Yeah, and that's probably, we just support our customers in helping them to realise our purpose and just to help them lead their own energy transition as well in the UK. So moving to more sustainable energy as opposed to some of the other ways that we've used energy in the past.
Yeah, I love that. That's really great context for our listeners today. And I was doing some research before we got on today because I wanted to see, what might be a similar company for people in the US. And so I looked up the largest energy provider in the US is Pacific Gas and Electric Company. And just by number of employees, they are only a quarter of the size of E.ON. So that gives you like a frame of reference for the company that Becky works in.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned sustainable energy, green energy. You said you've been with the company for 14 years. I'm curious about the transformation that within the energy space that E.ON has been through. I mean, we talk a lot about HR's transformation, and we're talking specifically today about transformation within recruitment. But I want to zoom out for just a minute and talk about the industry transformation that you've seen since you've been with the company and how that's impacting the work that you do.
Yes, there's been a huge change. So I've worked for a number of large companies throughout my career, but E.ON has definitely, I've experienced the most amount of change through E.ON. So not just personally, but like you say, from an industry perspective. So when I first joined E.ON, it would only just recently been named E.ON. It was before that PowerGen. So E.ON is our German counterpart. So our parent company is E.ON. And at that point, when I first joined, it was a much larger company from a UK perspective, but it was a lot of it was around sort of power stations and coal and gas and that type of thing. And over the years, we have transformed to more what we call ourselves now a retail business. So we've sold off or done asset swaps for a lot of our big power stations. We haven't got any power stations now, and like I say, our focus more is on the sustainable energy side. So we've really moved away. It's been hard to move away from being known as a traditional energy company and an engineering company, because we are no longer an engineering company. We've got very few engineering roles. But if you think about the way that people describe an engineering role, we've probably not got hardly any of them at the moment, because the old engineering roles were those people that ran the power stations and those types of roles. So we've really changed. So from a recruitment perspective, the impact it's had from that is learning different things and different disciplines. So we've only recently started doing solution sales, for example. So out there in the market, you wouldn't naturally go to an energy company for a solution sales role. You would go naturally to a different industry to look for that type of role. So from an employer brand point of view, we've had to do quite a lot to set ourselves up to look different. Same with IT. Obviously, we've got IT roles, but we're not traditionally, people will go to the likes of Google, for example, to go and get an IT role, not with E.ON for an IT role. So from that perspective, it's been a hard transition. And I would say that we're in a perfect place with that, because we're not seen as hugely competitive in some of those roles as well, because there are other bigger players out there in different industries. So we are still on that path. We're only probably a year, 18 months into this retail focus, but there's definitely been some huge changes since I've been working here.
Yeah, so as a company, there's a big transition from being a traditional energy company to being kind of this new age energy company, and to be seen differently in the market in that way. And then I imagine that's catalyzing the need for transformation in recruitment. I mean, to go from a traditional recruitment process that fit the traditional company into something that looks very different today.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
All right, so let's talk about, let's just rewind to a year ago. What challenges were you facing, and when did you see an opportunity to really make a change?
Okay. So I would say a year ago was the same challenges that we was experiencing 14 years ago when I joined the company. So I joined the company originally to recruit home energy consultants, which in the UK we call them door knockers. They're the people that knock on your door to sell you gas and electricity. And I was brought in to work on the campaign to recruit 1,000 of those across the country. So that was my first recruitment job, but also my first experience in the world of volume. And if I think back about the experiences and the challenges we had at that point, they were exactly the same as what we was having a year ago. And there'll probably not be any surprise to anybody, and I've spoken to lots of people about volume recruitment, and anybody listening now is probably will resonate with these. But some of the things were application numbers, so we just didn't see the volume of candidates coming through that we needed. That was either because we don't pay the most, we're a median market median payer, so we don't have the most competitive salary. We had a long process, so it probably takes 16 weeks, our average time to hire, so 16 weeks to get in and start with us. We didn't really have a real USP when it came to volume recruitment. So the types of roles that we class as our volume recruitment, we didn't really have a USP in comparison to some other companies that are out there. And again, where we've got our main locations, we've got a lot of competitors who always seem to have just something more than what we had. So that was a challenge. Challenges from the actual getting into the recruitment piece was around some of our conversions. So our no-show rates, so the people that were booked in for an interview or an assessment centre and then didn't show up on the day, no reason, no advance warning, and was around 30%. So obviously it's quite a high number of people that just weren't showing up on the day, which is really disheartening. And then the conversion rates from interview to offer was around 25% at best. So of the people that we did see and interviewed, only 25% of them were getting through. And then on the back of that, it was our attrition. So our attrition spiked at some points to around 40% in some of our locations. So as quick as we was recruiting them, it was leaving and we was having to backfill them. Now, the attrition did get better because when I was working in doing the door knocker recruitment, we were sometimes at 110%. So as soon as we was recruiting 16 people, 17 people were leaving. So we was always on the back foot. So the attrition did get better when we went into the contact centre world. But even so, 40% attrition it was always an uphill battle. So we always knew that we wanted to make changes. And in reference to the poll that you've done, it was all those things. The recruitment process wasn't quite right where we wanted it to be. The timing just wasn't right. We didn't have enough time in the day, those types of things. But last year, I went to an event. So I'm part of the Recruitment Leaders 100 in the UK, and we do events 3 or 4 times a year. And I happened to be sitting next to Chris from Launchpad at one of these events in December last year. And we were just talking over lunch, and he was explaining, asking questions about volume recruitment and what he does. And everything that I was saying was the challenges, which I've just spoken about. Chris said, oh, we might have something that might be able to help you with this. Here's what somebody else is doing. Could this help? So we set a demo up initially, but at the time, we were going through some difficult changes internally. We've got some constraints with some IT, and we've got some global contracts. So nothing really moved at that point. But everyone that was on that demo thought, this is brilliant. This is definitely what we aspire to see and aspire to change. And then E.ON Next came about, and that just opened the doors for us. And it was something new that we wanted to do. We wanted things to look differently. So changes were then able to be made. But it was that conversation with Chris that I had just on a off chance that really got us to thinking about what we could do to face these challenges.
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned Launchpad. So to clarify for everyone on the call, Launchpad is a UK-based company, and they offer a recruitment automation platform. And we really brought them into the Outmatch family. So they're now part of the Outmatch brand and platform. And so that's, as you hear Launchpad throughout this, just know that that's something that we are able to offer here at Outmesh now. So that's really exciting. Becky, you said you saw a lot of things in the demo that you liked. Can you tell me what were some of the things that stood out to you?
Yeah, it was really from the candidate experience point of view. So we've always wanted to offer a really good candidate experience, but for one reason or another, and some of the things I've mentioned there, we felt that we didn't offer a great candidate experience, whether that was down to the fact that it took us 4 weeks to get a contract out. We had some references that we used to do in the past, or it just took us the process. There's so many steps in the process, so that it just wasn't quite where we wanted it to be. But we sorry, I forgot what you wanted me to mention there. What was the question?
You said that you were looking at this demo, this Launchpad demo.
Sorry, yeah.
And you said there were a couple things that stood out to you. So I'm curious what piqued your interest there.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the demo. So the bits that we saw in the demo was around the candidate experience point of view. So the fact that they do everything in one platform and they can do everything end to end in that platform, whereas what we had previously, there was coming in and out and engaging in different ways, whereas through the platform, they just had the experience was much better. And we use SuccessFactors as our ATS, which has got many positives, but one of the downsides to that is from an engagement point of view, that the look and feel of SuccessFactors isn't great from a candidate point of view. It's a white background with black writing and an E.ON logo. It's so simple. So from an engagement point of view, we felt that Launchpad offered so much more as well as from what we saw in the demo. And then the main thing, I think, really, which ticked the biggest box was around the digital experience. So the fact that we could digitize the journey that a candidate goes through, and our recruiters, it can be more digital from a recruitment perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you could just walk us through those are the things you really liked and you wanted for your process and your experience. So what did your process look like at the time?
Yeah, so before, our process was that a candidate would apply for a vacancy on any of our sites where we advertise it. They would go through to SuccessFactors, where they would complete quite a lengthy application form. They'd upload a cover letter and a CV. A recruiter would then review the cover letter and the CV against the essential criteria that's on the vacancy. And if that person was successful and met what we was looking for, they would be given a call and they'd be booked in for a telephone interview. The recruiter would then call them and take them through the telephone interview. And that would be your basics of a conversation with a candidate. So checking that they're in the right location, salary expectations, their availability, but then would also include a motivational fit question and would also include competency-based questions. So then once that had finished, the recruiter would then go away, they'd score that, and then they'd have to get back to the candidate to say whether they've either been successful or unsuccessful at that stage. If successful, it's another phone call into the candidate to let them know they've been successful and to book them into one of the assessment centres that was scheduled. And depending on what campaign, we used to run assessment centres up to twice a week, but sometimes depending on how many people we needed, there could be more or there could be less throughout the month. But on average, you're probably looking about 8 a month that we would run assessment centres. So before the candidate would come to one of those assessment centres, a member of the recruitment team would ring them a day, 2 days before to confirm their attendance, make sure they're ready, make sure they've got all their right to work documents to take with them, and they've filled out the CRB form that they need to complete so we can do those checks. And then we'd wait for them to attend the assessment centre. The assessment centre was a traditional assessment centre setup, so it was a half-a-day assessment, would consist of 3 activities, which was a role play, a group exercise, and then a 45-minute competency-based interview. During that time as well, they would be shown around the offices, all their documents would be taken from them, photocopied, those types of things. They would then leave once they've finished their assessment, and then we would get back to them up to a week after to confirm if they've been successful or unsuccessful. And then if successful, we take them through the offer process, which, like I say, at that point was around a month to do, just because of how long it took for us to set up IT for them. So normally that was okay from those candidates that were in a role, because they'd normally have a standard month's notice period in the UK. But there are occasions where people were unemployed and were looking for something to start much quicker, which again was one of the challenges that we had. So that was the process that we did follow previously. Very long, very time consuming.
Yeah. I didn't count, but if I were to count the number of steps, that's a lot. That is a lot to get accomplished. That's a lot of kind of manual steps, manual touch points, waiting for something else to happen before you can move forward with the next step. And you said that that process generally took 16 weeks from start to finish?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I imagine
very long time to do.
Yeah, I imagine anyone on the call can kind of nod and say like, yes, this is either how I've done it in the past or this is how I'm doing it today, and really the driver behind wanting to make a change. That makes a lot of sense. The other thing we talked about, Becky, when we were planning for this webinar, you mentioned there was a need for a new type of candidate. I mean, you mentioned the transformation in the industry and the transformation in E.ON itself, and then I mean, there's a lot happening to kind of create a more modern experience across, for customers, for candidates, for everyone involved in the business. So what do you mean by needing a new type of candidate? What did that person look like to you?
Yeah, so with what I've just explained about that process, that was for a customer service advisor. So they, in our old world, customer service advisor would work Monday to Sunday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on a rotated basis, and they would work in teams. So a team might manage calls that a customer calls in about to talk about a bill, but they couldn't answer questions then about somebody who's moving home. So there's a different team who looks after people who are moving home, and a different team that looks after people submitting meter readings, for example. It was a really traditional customer service role, so it was very process driven. There's a team of 12 people, a team leader for each team. You was rotated on and off the phone. Your breaks were scheduled in. You couldn't be late from a break because that meant that customers sat there waiting to have their call answered. And then as part of the strategic partnership I mentioned with Kraken Technologies, that brought something new. And the reason why we entered that strategic partnership with Kraken Technologies, and probably something I should have mentioned when I was explaining a bit more about E.ON, is that as part of the Energy merger, so we took over Energy in Germany. Energy is the parent company of npower in the UK, so that's another gas and electricity company in the UK. And as part of that, we were acquiring npower's customers. So there's 2.8 million customers, residential customers, that we will be taking over from npower. And we recognise that the IT infrastructure that we had already in E.ON probably wasn't the best and didn't do what we wanted it to do. So Kraken Technologies offered us this new platform that meant that we needed to shape our contact centres and what we do. So with Kraken Technologies, what we're now looking for is somebody who works 9 to 5. They're multi-channel, so they're not just over the phone. They do all varies of social media. They do live chat. They work in teams of 8. They come up with their own rotas. They service a group of customers. So so they might get 20,000 customers per 8, a team of 8, and those customers will only go through to that team of 8. So they won't go through to any other team, and that team can answer any query. So they are multi-skilled. So if I ring up to a meter reading, but then I've got a query on my bill, the person I'm speaking to can answer any of my problems. So they're being skilled on everything, not just a singular thing. So it meant it was a real shift change in the type of person that we'd look for previously, mainly around behaviours, not necessarily skills. So we don't go out, so our advert doesn't stipulate that you have to have had previous contact centre experience. it talks more about the culture, and are you customer obsessed? Are you wanting to sort of solve problems? Do you take accountability? It's those types of skills that we're looking for now, not somebody who can sit on a phone and answer phone calls day in, day out and follow a process, so to speak. So we wanted to be, I hate using this word because it's used so much at the moment, but we wanted a more agile team that could do lots of different things. So with that, it gave us the opportunity to look to do something different from a recruitment perspective. Hence why we started on this journey when we did.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So we were looking at a more traditional style company, traditional style recruitment, and traditional style customer service. And now all of that has changed. And they have to change together. That's what I'm hearing from you, is that you can't make a change, you got to pull it all the way through. And it's interesting to talk about the intersection of candidate experience and employee experience and customer experience, because a lot of what I hear other companies talking about is, we have to have a good candidate experience because our candidates are also our customers. And that is 100% true and absolutely something to think about. But if you look at it from this other angle, where if you're going to have a certain type of employee, you have to have a certain type of experience to attract that person and pull them all the way through. If you want to be able to deliver a certain type of customer experience, then your candidate experience then needs to be curated and designed in order to get the person who can fulfill that experience for the customer. So I love kind of seeing the big Venn diagram of this, in my mind, where it's all kind of coming together.
Yeah.
Okay, so Becky, if you could now paint the picture for me of what that process and that experience looks like today, and how you've actually been able to find this new type of candidate and attract this new type of candidate with this new process.
Yeah, definitely. So the process we've got now is a candidate will still apply via the link that we put on our website and any other jobs boards that we have, but they will bypass SuccessFactors. So the link that sits behind the apply button takes them straight into the Launchpad platform. So the candidate will land on that platform. It's all branded, EON Next branded. We've even got the head of the department, the head of EON Next, they did a little video for us. And it's really authentic. This all happened during lockdown, so everything was virtual. So he stood in his bedroom with his t-shirt on, so it feels really authentic. But he does a welcome video, so the candidates listen to that first. It's about 30 seconds long, and they just get a bit more of a feel for EON Next and the role. And then once they've listened to that, they then go on to an application form. So we was able to build that out how we wanted. So we collect all the D&I information, we collect the personal information, we ask a few questions about the vacancy. So what location, because we've got multi-locations, what location they want to work in, set out salary expectations, again, all of those typical things that you would do when you're applying for a role. And then they go straight into a SJT. So situational judgment test, and there's 5 questions in there where they're presented with situations, and then there's multiple options underneath as to what they would do in that situation. And then from that point, they're then scored. And when we switch it on, if they get a certain mark, they will automatically go through to the next stage, or they'll be rejected. At the moment, everyone's going through, so we're not knocking anybody out on the SJT at the moment. But from that stage, they then go to the video interview. And again, we've got 5 questions. They're a bit of a mixture between the competency-based and a situational-based question. So they're sort of, what have you done in the past? What would you do in this situation? Can you tell me about a time? Those types of things. And again, they're all linked specifically to the EON Next culture and the ways of working in EON Next. From that point, the candidate then is, they finish their application. So it takes around 22 minutes to complete, but it's all done in one. And then from that point, they are said they've completed the application, some will be in touch. what we are just about to do is turn on the AI. So we've been training the AI for the last few months. So we've screened over 1,000 candidates and taught the AI what we want it to do. We've just had the results back from that. It's brilliant. So we've just switched that on. So which that means now is that AI will screen those candidates and put them into buckets for us. So RAG status, so red, unsuccessful, amber, we need to have a look at it, green, go straight through. But previously, prior to that, whilst I was sort of teaching the AI, there's a team of recruiters that will go in and score that video application based on some scoring matrix that we'd already defined. And anybody that was successful would then have a call to say, we'd like to book you in for an interview. They're booked in for an interview, and interviews take place every Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. And 9 times out of 10, a candidate is booked in and being interviewed within 3 days of their application being reviewed.
Yeah.
So that's how quick we are able to make this, which is just brilliant. And then they'll go to a virtual face-to-face. So again, it's all set up in Launchpad. So it's a Zoom call, but the link and the schedule, it all sits in Launchpad. The assessors get the link to the call, so does the candidate. The assessment team do the face-to-face, virtual face-to-face interview, which lasts about 45 minutes. It feels more like a chat than an interview. It's very different to what we would do currently in E.ON. And they have their interview, and they are told that within 48 hours they'll receive an outcome of whether they've been successful or not. If they're successful normally it's the next day after the wash up, the team will ring them and say they've been successful, talk through salary, start dates. And again, at the moment, because we are recruiting at such pace, we've got 6 inductions, 6 teams being recruited every 2 weeks. So we're recruiting a lot of people. So at the moment, people are able to start as quick as they can start, really. So some people we've been able to start within a week because we've got no IT issues, and we use DocuSign for our contracts. So contracts go out electronically. But equally, if somebody says, I need to give a month's notice and start in a month, we can do that as well. So you can see that we've just changed that process completely. And when we turn on the other functionalities that we've got ready to switch on through Launchpad, it will be even more of a slick and digitized process with very little human interaction, which is what we wanted it to be. Where we will add the human interaction is having that really good value add call before the candidate goes to that interview, just to help them prepare for that interview. And that's where we see the recruiters can really add that value.
Yeah, that's great. I love what you said about really making this closely connected to E.ON's culture, and the video you talked about. All of that is creating this journey where someone doesn't have to wait until they're offered the job to really start getting into what this company is like and what it's like to work there.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine even if you don't do a realistic job preview, that's what you're creating with this experience is getting people to understand the values and the culture and what's important and what it's going to be like when they join, if they join. So I love that you're able to create that for them. And it's really a reflection of you at E.ON.
Yeah, it's really good. We've got lots of things. So we've got an external careers website, but we've built a special page just for E.ON Next. And as we was recruiting people into those roles, we've got people who have gone through the process, who have done little videos. Again, they're all really authentic because they're all self-filmed, because we can't get people out there to go and do the ones that we might have done in the past. But I think that feels much better, and actually a better reflection of E.ON Next. So there's lots of things on the website as well to give them a really good idea of the role and the environment that they might go and work in if they're successful.
Yeah, I like what you said about it being authentic and real, because when you go into kind of fallback mode of having a traditional process, a process that looks like everybody else's process, there's really no differentiator there.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move into, you said that you really launched this new process in May, so 5 months ago. What are some of the results you've seen so far?
Okay, yeah, so we went live on the 18th of May. That date will be engraved in my mind forever. There's so much work that went into this.
Oh,
and yeah, we've seen fantastic results. So we've had over 4,000 applications on the platform in those 5 months, which I just think is incredible. And I know that the market is very different at the moment because of everything that's going on. So we expect it to be a higher amount of candidates that are applying for the roles. But from those 4,000 applications that we've had, that is internal and external, what we've managed to see so far from a results point of view, I'll link them back to some of the challenges that I mentioned at the beginning. So the time to hire has gone down to around 4 weeks, which includes notice period. So for us, that's amazing. That's on average, but like I did say, there are some people that we can start much quicker than that. Our conversion rate at interview, so from being booked onto an interview to being successful, has increased to on average 47%. But there are at times when we're in the 60% bracket from certain days when we're doing interviews. So again, that's just amazing and completely surpassed what we thought we might get with this. The no-show rate. So I mentioned earlier, one of the challenges was people just not showing up to the assessment centres. We've got a less than 2% no-show rate now for interviews, which again is just phenomenal if you think about the amount of interviews that we're doing. And again, I know that the times that we're in might have impacted that because we have made it virtual, it's online rather than face-to-face, but I still think the process and it being so slick is a factor in that, and only time will tell once we come out of whenever we might come out of the situation we're in at the moment. And again, with the attrition, it's less than 2% attrition across the whole of E.ON Next. And again, market conditions could be a contributing factor into that at the moment with there being so many unemployed here in the UK. But 2% we've never seen. That's the type of attrition we see in HR or finance. That isn't the type of attrition we normally see in a contact centre role. So for us, they are fantastic results and we're really pleased with them. And then I guess the other thing that just to point out is I mentioned that we've been doing the AI piece. So the candidates that we've screened, that have gone through, there's a modelling in the background of Launchpad that looks at everything the recruiter does and the information that the candidate puts through. But we've had the report back from that when they've built the model based on the information that's gone in, and the D&I factors that have come in to this as well. In comparison to the D&I data that we held on our traditional methods, we are, from an ethnicity point of view and from a gender point of view, there is no differentiator between your ethnic background or your gender. So the results of people going through, being the amount of people that are applying from those backgrounds and then progressing, they're near enough the same. And actually the applications are much higher from a BAME background than a non-BAME background, which we was really astonished with. Gender is about 50-50. The age ones is a funny one. So we get most of our applicants are under 35 because this is probably seen as a entry-level role in the UK. So it is a career starter. So therefore we would expect that is the bracket that feels comfortable for us. But again, there isn't any known discrimination from those people who might be of an older age not getting through to an interview. So we was really pleased with that data as well. We didn't expect it to be that high. It's really good.
That's fantastic. I love hearing that. And I think once you talk through these results, it becomes really powerful to say, absolutely, this is the direction that we need to be in. But I wonder, at the beginning of this process, was this difficult to sell internally? It sounds like something you were excited about. Were others excited about it too?
Yeah, because people were really excited. And again, the timing couldn't have been more perfect. We've looked at things like this in the past, and we do have constraints. So SuccessFactors it's a global platform, so it's ran in Germany, and we've got a global contract. So we have got some constraints in the UK. But with E.ON Next, it's UK driven. We wanted it to be different. We wanted it to visibly and everything about it just to feel different. So when we mentioned to our HR director, oh, we've got this thing that we can do video applications, if we make it more digital, which that's one of his buzzwords, he was really up for it. And to be honest, all it took was, so as part of the demo, when the demo came through, Chris sent us some videos after from Launchpad, and in that pack was an executive summary, and it was a one-page document with all the things about the tool, what it could do, and some of the ROI. We tailored that with some of our own data just to bring it to life. And all it took was submitting that with one conversation about how good it is, and it was sold. Like I say, the timing was just perfect for us. And ever since, it's had a lot of people across the company have been really, really interested in it. And I've actually just sent an email today to our exec population just to tell them that we're live with the AI. Here's some of the results we've had. Some people are really excited about it. So the sell wasn't hard, and to the point now where we are going to branch out and use it for different areas. So not just the contact centre. We've just started it with an apprentice campaign that we've launched. So again, tailor it to meet the apprentice campaign. That it was quite an easy sell once you see the demo and with the results you can get. It was good.
That's great to hear. And you mentioned success factors, so I think that leads into this next question really well. So if we circle back to really what the title of this webinar is, how you make big transformational changes and create the experience you want to create without having to kind of wait in queue or request changes or do the big heavy lift that it might take to make changes within your ATS. Can you talk through just the benefits you've seen in taking this approach?
Yeah, the benefits really were from a timing perspective. So we haven't had to wait to write business cases and get sign off and get budget approved to have our ATS changed. As I mentioned, it's a global platform. So whatever we request a change in the UK has to be agreed by all other countries because there's an impact on them. There's cost implications, not just from doing the changes, but then from running those changes on an annual basis. So the cost would increase that way. So from being able to do it as a standalone, it's been meant that we could just go ahead and do it, and we could do it just for the UK, just for E.ON Next, just for what we wanted. So we've really been able to make it bespoke for that. So that's probably one of the good things. Now, the good thing again with the Launchpad platform is that it can be integrated into SuccessFactors. From a Launchpad and SuccessFactors point of view, actually doing that activity is what they tell me is quite easy to do. I'm not a technical person, so I don't know, but they say it's something that's quite easy to do. But I think also for us, we wanted to test it, make sure it was going to do what we wanted it to do, and give that experience that we wanted the recruiters, the managers, and the candidates to feel, and without spending months and months and months and a lot of money embedding that into the ATS. So yeah, for us, that they were the benefits from our point of view.
Yeah, so by doing it standalone, or at least starting that way, if it wasn't exactly what you wanted it to be and it wasn't delivering the results you expected, you could pull it out, right? Much easier than going back into the ATS after you had just kind of done all this work to get it integrated and pull it out from there.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm curious, since we're on this topic, I saw an article the other day that was really giving advice on how to buy HR tech. And one piece of advice within that article said that so many buyers think integration is going to change the way they work every day. And a lot of times this isn't the case. The integration itself is most likely not solving your problem. So while we do integrate with a lot of integration partners, we love our integration partners, those things are available. I'm curious, Becky, what is your reaction to that statement? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I somewhat agree with it. Okay. Just because of what I've explained then. So doing it outside of the ATS, it brings you lots of positives, and it just means that you can do things in a different way. The integrating the tool with SuccessFactors, what would it give us differently? At the moment, the only thing that we've identified is data. And this is what I always have to keep reminding myself and reminding others, is that Launchpad isn't an applicant tracking system. It is a video application tool or a candidate experience tool. SuccessFactors is the applicant tracking system. And at E.ON, like many other big corporate companies, we do a lot of data. We have to do a lot of reporting. And what we found that we struggled with, and I think it was just getting our head around it looking different, was the data. So I so I can see it from both sides, if that makes sense, that statement that you've read out. There's pros and cons to both. What we would love to do is to go ahead now and integrate that into success factors so that we can have the best of both worlds. The candidate's data would land into success factors. So our normal reporting suite that we've got on there, we can pull all those reports that we normally do without having to use another system. But equally, the platform alone is good enough the way that it is to do exactly what we want it to do.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. Thank you for sharing that. We're almost to the Q&A portion of the webinar. So if you have questions for Becky, get them in and we can answer a few of those. But first, I just want to look at, Becky, what are your priorities now that you've got this new system and process in place? What's the next big thing that you plan to tackle for next year?
I think for us, it's definitely our approach to assessment. So as I mentioned, we do things a little bit differently for E.ON Next, but we're not just E.ON Next, we've got our E.ON Core part of the company as well. And again, we're quite traditional in that sense that it's a competency-based interview, there's presentations, there's role plays, there's case studies, they're all tell me about a time, they're all based on our internal competencies that we have. And I would really like to look at moving away from that, looking at what's out there, what other people might do, or just other ways that we could maybe look to assess candidates. And also as part of that, it's how we can continue to develop that. So we're doing that virtually. For us, it's been a real positive from the whole coronavirus situation is the fact that we've been forced to do things differently. Now the whole business, recruitment didn't really stop that much for us. And actually with the adding of E.ON Next, it was busier than it was ever expected to be. But the whole business now, we don't do anything face-to-face, so we couldn't for a long time, but it's working really well for everything. So it's how we can continue to develop that and what else is out there for us to do from that point of view.
Yeah, I'm curious, do you plan to stay fully remote at E.ON, or do you plan to do some sort of a hybrid model in bringing people back to work partially or in certain areas?
I think that it'll be a hybrid, yeah. So for us, we've got a lot of people working from home at the moment. We've only got about 30% of our workforce in the office working. Everybody else, we've again got over the hurdles that was there around remote working and been able to get over that, and people are at home. But I think that there's always a need sometimes to do things in a face-to-face manner. Or in an office environment, but I think we will do a lot more things virtually than we did in the past.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing from a lot of companies right now is I never expected it to work as well as it works. So there's something tangible and practical there, but also how do we work in the face-to-face piece that people are so missing right now? So I've actually, we did a poll not long ago just to see, after Twitter announced their decision to go kind of permanent forever, how many other companies were thinking that way? And fewer than I thought, actually. The majority of companies in that specific survey said that they're going to do some sort of a hybrid model, whether that means going into work a few days a week and having some kind of rotational schedule, or having satellite offices available to people, not being 100% virtual 100% of the time. So I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, if you have any questions, I'm going to turn to our Q&A slide here. If you have any questions for Becky, chat them in and we'll answer anything that you're curious about. I do have another question for you, Becky. Since we're talking about, this is all about candidate experience, and I know that just the word experience is really big and can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So what does candidate experience mean to you?
For me, it's them walking away from their interaction with us having a positive frame of mind. Like you mentioned at the beginning, these people that apply for jobs through us, those 4,000 people that have put an application in for us, are either a customer or could be a customer in the future. If they have a bad experience with us from a recruitment perspective, the likelihood is that they'll either not be a customer anymore, or they won't even think about being a customer because they've had that bad experience. So for us, it's leaving that positive, the positive thoughts in their mind when they hear the word E.ON or E.ON Next. And it is thinking about, we always try and think about the candidate in everything that we do. So if we are looking to make changes, it's what impact that might have on them to make sure they get the best experience. So we've been talking a lot about feedback, and we think feedback is really valuable to candidates. So how can we make sure they're getting that feedback in a timely manner? So a lot of companies, as being one of them, either didn't offer it, or it took about 4 weeks for them to receive the feedback, which by that point is probably useless to them. Whereas if you can deliver it up front, it gives them that great experience. So for me, it's all about how they feel when they walk away.
Yeah, absolutely. My husband was on the job market recently, and so I got to really see this through the lens of what it's like for candidates, because so much of what I read about and talk about is from the employer's point of view. So what does candidate experience mean from the employer's point of view? I mean, it drives efficiency, it's branding, it's all of these things. But to hear him voice some of his frustrations, and all of the places he was applying to were places that we would also be customers. And so he was getting that kind of negative impression every time that he wasn't communicated with, or he wasn't told what the next step would be, or things just weren't moving along and he was left in the dark. So it's a really good call out. And yeah. I heard a client the other day, a retail client of ours, say that our brand is bigger than our business. So the impression that the brand can make is bigger than the actual size of the business. And I just thought that was a really good way of putting that, and how important that really is to people.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
And it's a challenging time for everybody. I mean, it's a challenging time for employers, but it's a challenging time for people on the job market. And it's an emotional process for them as well. I mean, a lot of people didn't expect to be out of work on the job market, and here they are, with really no expectation of what the future is going to hold for them if they're not hearing back from anybody. And there's so much other kind of disruption in the world at the same time that it all compounds and makes it just a really difficult time to have a poor experience.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah.
All right. This has been a really great conversation, Becky. I'm so glad to have been able to chat with you. Let's move on to our last piece here. I have one more question for you. What's your number one lesson or your best piece of advice, you know, the thing that you'd like to leave our audience with in terms of the journey you've been on in the past year in creating this new candidate experience?
For me, the best piece of advice is just do it. I think having that mentality where we was like, we had such a short space of time to make any changes. It only took us 6 weeks to build the platform in the way that we wanted it to be. So that's really, really quick. What that meant is we're changing all of our process in the background as well. And for me, it was just a case of we just needed to do it. We could have sat and spoke about it and been on about it and then not done it, and then another year passed. So for me, the best advice is if you want to do it, just do it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, because technology is it's a risk, right? So in order to know if it's going to be a payoff for you, you have to just take the risk, and then doing it the way that you did it. If it wasn't the best choice, you could try something different. You were able to create this really space where you could experiment in a way that you couldn't before. So I think that's a really great piece of advice to end with today. Thank you, Becky. Thank you, everyone on the call, for listening and hanging with us through the hour. If you want to learn more about Launchpad, which is the platform that Becky was referring to throughout, we now offer that through Outmatch. So I'm happy to get you set up with a demo or help you learn more about that so you can really see what this looks like in the experience that we were describing today. So thank you again. So excited to have you, and I hope to see everyone back for our next session.
Thank you ever so much.
Bye, Becky.
Bye. Bye.